The Grand Assembly of the Galactic Council convened on the luminous world of Vorthos, an ancient planet nestled in the heart of the Trian Nebula. Species from across the galaxy filled the vast hall, each delegation representing a race older than the stars themselves. The hum of 1,000 languages echoed through the chambers as the representatives took their seats, while the High Council members prepared to speak in their sacred tongue. The humans sat quietly at the far end of the room, their representatives looking only at the floor. A few exchanged glances, but no one spoke. The room went silent as the leader of the Council of Elders stood, his large form towering above the gathered races. His eyes glowed like twin suns as he began to speak. He spoke of unity and peace, the need for the galactic community to come together for the betterment of all. But as his words echoed through the air, they were laced with mockery hidden beneath the veil of diplomacy. He spoke of humanity as a curious experiment of evolution, a species that had risen from the ashes of a dying world. Their history brief, their achievements primitive, their technologies weak. Compared to the ancient races that sat in this hall, the other council members shifted in their seats, clearly entertained by the elder's tone. As his words became more pointed, he spoke of humanity's so-called triumphs in space travel, how the humans had only just begun to venture into the stars, how their primitive machines could barely keep up with the galaxy's established powerhouses. The alien representatives whispered amongst themselves, casting amused glances toward the human small delegation. The words of the council elder had sparked laughter in the room. The humans were a curiosity at best, an anomaly in a universe filled with ancient civilizations that had perfected the art of survival. While humanity was still struggling to make its mark on the galaxy, the jokes continued quietly under the hum of conversation. The humans remained silent, their faces stoic. Though their eyes burned with the sting of ridicule, the other races could not understand how such a species could have any ambition to stand among the stars when they barely had the strength to survive their own world. Among the humans in the back of the room, a sense of unease began to build. The mockery was subtle but cruel, yet Elias stood unshaken. His hands rested calmly in his lap, his thoughts distant as the mockery swirled around him. He was not the only one to notice the strange sense of superiority emanating from the other species. The disdain they felt for humanity was palpable. It was as if they were mocking a child who had yet to grasp the complexity of the universe, yet in their arrogance, they failed to see the true potential that lay hidden beneath humanity's surface. Elias had spent years studying the ancient records of Earth, delving into long-forgotten archives, and discovering remnants of a time when humanity was far more than what these alien species believed they were. He had uncovered texts that spoke of a forgotten language, a language once used by humanity's ancestors to communicate with forces beyond comprehension. It was the key to an untapped power, one that could rival any civilization in the galaxy. The language itself was more than just words. It was a weapon, a force waiting to be unleashed. And now Elias knew it was time to reveal humanity's true nature. But not just yet, not in front of the council, not while they still underestimated them. As the laughter died down and the elder returned to his speech, Elias glanced at his fellow humans. The time for silence was nearing its end. Humanity had been mocked long enough. The humans remained quiet as the mockery continued to fill the hall. Elias could feel the weight of the laughter pressing down on them, but he refused to let it show. He had spent years studying, learning, and understanding the depths of what humanity truly was, and this was just the beginning. He knew that the other races had underestimated Earth's potential, and he was determined to prove them wrong. But for now, silence was their weapon, and patience their ally. As the meeting concluded, the humans slowly rose from their seats, their expressions composed, but beneath the calm demeanor, there was a shared understanding. Elias exchanged a glance with Ambassador Maris, the leader of the human delegation. It was a subtle gesture, but Maris knew what it meant. The time had come to act, but carefully. Too much too soon could draw unwanted attention, and they couldn't risk revealing their hand too early. Outside the grand hall, the humans gathered in a small, quiet chamber. The echoes of the council's laughter still lingered in their minds, but there was a new resolve in their eyes. Elias addressed the group, his voice low and steady. "We've been humiliated here today, But this is just a test. The Council believes we're weak, that we're nothing more than a passing curiosity. They don't know what we're truly capable of." He paused, letting the words sink in. His eyes moved from one face to the next, reading the room. There was a fire in their eyes now, a quiet fury burning beneath the surface. "It's time to look deeper into what we've forgotten. The ancient language. It's our key. We must learn it, unlock its power, and show them that humanity is not to be underestimated." Maris nodded. "We've already begun. But there's a risk. The Council will not take kindly to us wielding such power, not without understanding the consequences. If we reveal it too quickly, we could start a war we're not prepared for." Elias met her gaze, his expression unwavering. "I'm aware. But we don't have the luxury of waiting anymore. We've already been judged. Our silence will no longer be mistaken for weakness. The universe needs to know that humanity is not a species to be mocked." For days, Elias and his team worked in secret, poring over the ancient texts, decoding the forgotten language. It was no easy task. The language was unlike anything they had ever encountered, a series of symbols and sounds that seemed to resonate with something deep within the universe itself. But the more they studied, the clearer it became. This was not just a language of communication. It was a tool of immense power, a force that could shape reality itself. As they delved further into their studies, strange occurrences began to happen. Devices malfunctioned. Lights flickered in strange patterns. The air felt heavier, as if the very fabric of space was responding to the words they were speaking, even in their private chambers. It was subtle at first, but undeniable. They were tapping into something far beyond their understanding. Elias felt it most keenly. The power of the language called to him, like a distant echo from a time long past. It was intoxicating, and yet terrifying. The knowledge they were unlocking was ancient, and with it came the awareness that humanity had been far more than a fledgling species, struggling to survive. They had once been great in ways that no one, not even the oldest races in the galaxy, could comprehend. The time for silence was over. Elias knew that soon they would have to show the galaxy that humanity was far more than a curiosity. But they would do it carefully, strategically, and when the moment came, they would unleash the forgotten power of their ancestors. The Council might have laughed today, but the last laugh would belong to humanity. As the days passed, Elias and his team grew more absorbed in the study of the ancient language. Each new discovery felt like a revelation, each word they deciphered carrying with it a sense of growing power. The language was not simply a means of communication, but a conduit to something far greater. There was a rhythm to it, an energy that seemed to vibrate within the very fabric of space itself. It was as if the words held the power to manipulate reality, to shape the universe to the speaker's will. The team worked in secret, away from the prying eyes of the Council and other alien representatives. They knew that revealing this knowledge too soon could lead to disaster. But each day, as they uncovered more of the language, Elias couldn't shake the feeling that humanity had been carrying this secret for far too long. It was time to awaken what had been dormant for centuries, to unlock the potential hidden in humanity's past. It wasn't just about power, though. Elias understood that the language was tied to the very origins of humanity. It was a language used by the first civilizations on Earth, civilizations that had once commanded great forces, far beyond the understanding of today's technology. This ancient power had been lost to time, buried beneath layers of history and forgotten wars. But now, in their hands, it was beginning to resurface. One evening, as the team gathered in their private chamber, Elias spoke quietly, his voice full of urgency. "We've been focusing too much on the technical aspects of the language. We've overlooked the most important part, the connection it gives us to our ancestors. This language, it's not just a key to power, it's a link to everything we've lost." Maris, one of the senior diplomats, looked up from the ancient text she had been reading. "What do you mean? How can words connect us to the past?" Elias stood up, pacing back and forth as he spoke. The language isn't just a collection of sounds and symbols. It's a memory, a living echo of a time when humanity was at its peak. These words aren't just commands or phrases. They resonate with the energy of our world, the energy that shaped our ancestors' accomplishments. Every time we speak them, we're reconnecting with that ancient power. The room fell silent as the weight of his words sank in. They had been so focused on understanding the language's mechanics, its structure, its sounds, that they hadn't fully grasped its deeper significance. This was not just an ancient tool. It was a doorway to the very essence of humanity's lost potential. Merit slowly nodded. So you believe the language can give us access to that power? Elias stopped pacing and turned to face her. I know it can. But we need to be careful. This isn't just a tool to be used. It's a force that can shape reality itself. We're already starting to feel its effects, the subtle shifts in the air, the disruptions in the technology around us. The more we speak it, the stronger the connection grows. If we're not careful, we might awaken something we're not ready to handle. The rest of the team exchanged uneasy glances. They had all felt it. The strange hum in the air, the flickering lights, the odd sensations when they spoke the language aloud. It was as though something was responding, something ancient and powerful. And with each word they uncovered, the feeling grew stronger. Elias returned to the table, his fingers hovering over the ancient text. We've only scratched the surface. There's more to this language than we understand, but the potential it holds is unlike anything the galaxy has ever seen. We are not the primitive species they think we are. Humanity was once a force to be reckoned with, and now it's time to show the universe just how powerful we can be. The room was filled with a newfound sense of purpose. The power of the forgotten language wasn't just a weapon, it was a legacy that humanity had been denied, but one that would now be reclaimed. The journey ahead would be dangerous, and they would need to tread carefully, but there was no turning back now. Humanity was on the verge of awakening something far greater than anything the galaxy had ever known, and they would not be silenced again. The time had come. The Galactic Council was set to reconvene, and the humans were ready to make their move. Elias and his team had spent weeks perfecting their understanding of the ancient language, but they knew that this was not just about words. It was about demonstrating the true potential of humanity, showing the galaxy that they were not a weak species to be mocked, but one that had the power to shape the future. As the council meeting began, Elias felt a familiar tension in the air. The chamber was filled with representatives from every corner of the galaxy, each one watching carefully to see how humanity would present itself this time. The elder of the council, a towering figure from the ancient race of Jareth, called the meeting to order. His deep, rumbling voice echoed through the chamber, and once again, the topic of discussion turned to the future of the galaxy, with humanity's role still a point of contention. Elias took his place among the human delegation, his mind focused, his thoughts clear. He could feel the weight of every eye in the room. All the alien species that had laughed at humanity, that had questioned their place in the stars. But this time, it was different. This time, they would speak with a voice that carried power beyond what the council could imagine. As the discussions grew heated, with alien factions pushing their agendas and casting doubt on humanity's ability to contribute, Elias knew it was time. He stood up, his movements deliberate, and the murmurs in the room quieted as all eyes turned to him. He had always been calm, composed, and collected. But this time, there was something in his presence that felt different, something that resonated with an energy just beneath the surface. The room fell silent as Elias stepped forward and addressed the council, his voice steady and unwavering. We, the humans, have been silent for too long. You have mocked us, dismissed us, and underestimated us. But we are not a species to be overlooked. We carry within us the power of our ancestors, a power that you cannot begin to comprehend. As he spoke, Elias's words seemed to hang in the air, each syllable charged with a strange energy that made the entire room feel heavier. The alien representatives exchanged uneasy glances, but Elias continued, his voice growing stronger with each word. I speak to you today not with threats, but with the truth. The language you mock, the language of our lost civilizations, has been rediscovered. We have unlocked its power, and now we stand on the precipice of a new era. An era where humanity is no longer seen as weak, no longer seen as a mere curiosity. We are a force to be reckoned with. Elias paused, allowing the weight of his words to sink in. He could feel the subtle hum of the language building within him, the ancient power awakening as he spoke. It was as if the very fabric of reality was responding, the air around him shifting as if it were alive. With a deliberate motion, Elias raised his hand, and in that instant, the language flowed from him, not just as words, but as an energy, a pulse that rippled through the room. The lights flickered, and the temperature in the chamber seemed to drop as a strange wave of force emanated from Elias, pushing against the technology around them. The council members recoiled, their eyes wide with fear and confusion. They had never felt anything like it before. The holographic displays around the room began to distort, flickering in and out of focus as the systems struggled to adapt to the power that Elias had unleashed. The hum of the ancient language filled the air, growing louder, more intense, as if it were alive. For a brief moment, the entire room seemed to bend and shift, as if the very reality around them was warping. The elder of the council stood frozen, his expression a mixture of disbelief and fear. He was not accustomed to such displays of power, especially from a species he had considered insignificant. The other alien representatives were equally stunned, unsure of what was happening, unsure of how to respond. Elias lowered his hand, and the room fell silent once again. The power that had flooded the chamber seemed to dissipate, but the air still felt thick with the weight of what had just occurred. The council members were shaken, their confidence cracked for the first time. The humans had shown them that they were no longer the fragile species they had mocked. The council meeting continued, but now there was a palpable shift in the atmosphere. The humans were no longer just a curiosity. They were a power to be respected. The alien representatives, once so eager to dismiss humanity, now regarded them with a mixture of awe and fear. Elias knew that the message had been received. The forgotten language of humanity's ancestors had been unleashed, and the galaxy would never look at Earth the same way again. The days that followed the council meeting were filled with a mixture of anticipation and unease. Elias could sense the shift in the atmosphere. The other races had not yet fully grasped the magnitude of what had occurred, but they were beginning to understand that humanity was no longer the naive species they had once thought. The power they had unleashed was subtle but undeniable, and it rippled across the galaxy like a quiet storm, leaving uncertainty in its wake. Elias and his team continued to study the ancient language, pushing further into its depths. Each new discovery felt like a step toward something greater, something that could reshape the very fabric of the galaxy. But as their understanding grew, so too did the danger. The more they spoke the language, the more they felt the pull of something vast and ancient. It was as if the power they were tapping into was not merely a tool, but a living force, one that could not be controlled so easily. One evening, as Elias sat alone in a quiet chamber, he reflected on the path they had taken. They had started this journey to prove humanity's worth to the galaxy, to show that they were not to be dismissed. But now, the stakes had become far higher. The language they had unlocked was more than just a means to command power. It was a link to humanity's lost legacy, a legacy that had the potential to reshape not only their world, but the entire universe. Elias stood up and walked over to the table where the ancient texts lay open. The symbols seemed to pulse in the dim light, calling to him, urging him to understand more, to push deeper. He traced his fingers over the words, feeling the energy that resonated from them, as if they were alive, waiting to be spoken. He knew that they had only just begun to understand the true scope of the language. It was a tool, yes, but it was also a responsibility. The power it granted was unlike anything humanity had ever known. They had already seen what it could do, how it had disrupted the technology of the Council, how it had warped the very air around them. But that was only the beginning. The language had the potential to alter the very fabric of reality, to shape the universe in ways that no one, not even the oldest species in the galaxy, could fathom. The implications of this discovery were staggering. Elias couldn't help but wonder if they were ready for what was to come. There was a part of him that feared the consequences of pushing the language too far, of unlocking powers they couldn't control. But there was another part of him, an unshakable part, that knew they had to continue. Humanity had been dormant for too long. They had been underestimated, dismissed as weak and insignificant. But now, they had a chance to prove that they were more than that. They had a chance to show the galaxy that Earth was a force to be reckoned with. The Council had seen their power once, but that was just a glimpse. Elias knew that it was only a matter of time before the galaxy would see the full extent of what humanity could do. The question was not whether they would act. It was when. And when the time came, they would have to be ready. As the days passed, the team worked tirelessly, refining their understanding of the language and its effects. They practiced speaking it, slowly, cautiously, testing the limits of what they could do. Each time they used it, the results were more dramatic, more pronounced. Technology malfunctioned, the atmosphere shifted, and the air seemed to hum with an energy that was both exhilarating and terrifying. The language was growing stronger within them, and Elias could feel its pull. It was like a whisper in the back of his mind, urging him to go further, to explore its full potential. But he knew that the time to act had not yet come. They still had much to learn, much to prepare for. The galaxy was vast, and there were forces at work that they could not yet understand. But one thing was certain: humanity was no longer the underdog. They had shown the galaxy that they possessed a power unlike anything anyone had seen before, and with that power, they would rise. As Elias and his team continued their research, they began to see something even more remarkable. The power of the forgotten language was not limited to the manipulation of technology or the physical world alone. There were strange, almost mystical effects emerging, signs that the language was beginning to affect the very fabric of reality itself. At first, it was subtle, small shifts in the atmosphere, whispers that seemed to linger in the air long after the words had been spoken. But as they continued to experiment, the effects grew stronger. One evening, while Elias was alone in the research chamber, he experienced something that made him stop in his tracks. He had been reading the ancient text when, without warning, the room around him seemed to shift. The walls of the chamber wavered, like ripples in water, and for a brief moment, the space itself seemed to stretch and warp. His heart raced as he tried to make sense of what he had just witnessed. Had the language truly had this much power all along? Or was there something more at play? Something deeper, something that they were only beginning to understand? When he looked down at the ancient text again, it was as if the symbols had changed, as if they were speaking directly to him, urging him to continue. A cold shiver ran down his spine, and he realized that the language was not just a tool. It was a connection to something far older, something far more profound. It was a bridge to the past, to a time when humanity had been far more than just a fledgling species. The energy he had felt, the strange distortions in the air, were not just the result of technological interference. They were a sign of something far more significant. The language was alive, and it was calling to them. Elias knew that they had to move quickly. They had uncovered so much already, that the power they were unlocking was far beyond their initial understanding. The Council had mocked them, laughed at them, dismissed them as insignificant. But humanity had not been weak. They had simply been waiting for the right moment to awaken. That moment was now. The team convened in their secret chamber, their faces grim but determined. Elias shared his experiences with them, explaining the strange disturbances he had felt. The room was thick with tension as they realized the true scope of what they were dealing with. This was not just a language. It was a living force, a remnant of a civilization that had existed long before any of the galaxy's known races. It had the power to reshape the world, to bend the very laws of nature to its will. Maris, ever the cautious one, spoke up. "We've seen what it can do to our technology, how it can disrupt systems. But if it's truly alive, what are the consequences? What happens when we unlock something we're not ready to control?" Elias looked around at the others, his expression determined. "We don't have the luxury of waiting any longer. The galaxy has already seen our power, and they fear us. But if we wait too long, the Council will simply push us aside again. We must act now, before they forget what we are capable of." The decision was made. They would reveal the true power of humanity, not just to the Council, but to the galaxy. The ancient language would be their weapon, their tool for shaping the future. The risk was great, but the reward was even greater. The Council would no longer look down on them, no longer mock their species. Humanity had been waiting for its moment, and now it would seize it. As the team prepared to make their move, Elias could feel the power of the language growing within him, urging him forward. It was as if the very core of the universe had aligned with their intentions, and with each passing day, they grew stronger. The galaxy would soon learn that humanity was not just a species of survivors. It was a species of creators, of builders, and of forces that could shape the very stars themselves. And when the time came, the galaxy would remember the name of Earth. The time had come. The Council had called another meeting, this time with an air of tension that was impossible to ignore. News of the strange disturbances following the humans' demonstration had spread like wildfire, and whispers of their newfound power were now circulating among the galactic powers. The elder races, once confident in their superiority, were beginning to question whether humanity was a force they could afford to ignore. The humans, for the first time in history, had a real chance to reshape their place in the galaxy. Elias stood before the Council once again, his expression calm but resolute. He had prepared for this moment for months, knowing that it would be a test not just of humanity's power, but of their will. The galaxy would never forget the message they were about to send. The room was thick with the presence of the other species, each one watching closely, eager to see what the humans would do next. The mocking, the dismissal, the underestimation, they were all behind them now. What they had seen before had been only a glimpse, a spark of what humanity was capable of. But today, the galaxy would witness the full force of humanity's strength. Elias stepped forward, his voice cutting through the silence of the chamber. "I stand before you today not as a representative of a weak and helpless species, but as a voice of a civilization that has been waiting to reclaim its rightful place. You have underestimated us, mocked us, laughed at our accomplishments, but we are not the creatures you once believed us to be. We are more than that." He paused, letting his words settle over the room. The Council members, their faces a mix of curiosity and wariness, leaned in, their attention now fully fixed on the humans. Elias could feel the tension building, a palpable sense of anticipation in the air. This was no longer just about the ancient language. It was about something far greater. It was about showing the galaxy that humanity was not just a species struggling to survive. They were a species that could create, build, and command powers that even the oldest races had never dreamed of. Elias took a deep breath and began to speak the ancient words once more. As he did, the air around him shifted, and a strange energy filled the room. The lights flickered, the temperature dropped, and for a brief moment, reality itself seemed to ripple. The language resonated with a force that was both ancient and new, a power that had been dormant for eons, but was now awakening with a vengeance. The Council members exchanged nervous glances, clearly unsettled by the sensation of the room shifting around them. The elder Zerath, the one who had mocked humanity the most during previous meetings, stood from his seat, his eyes wide with fear. "What is this? What are you doing?" he demanded, his voice trembling with a rare sense of vulnerability. Elias met his gaze, his eyes unwavering. "This is the true power of humanity," he said. This is the power of the forgotten language, a power that we have reclaimed. You cannot understand it, but you will soon feel its effects." With that, Elias raised his hand, and the energy in the room intensified. The walls seemed to bend, the very air warping with the force of the language. The technological systems in the chamber malfunctioned, flickering in and out of existence, unable to handle the overwhelming surge of power. For a brief moment, it felt as though the fabric of the galaxy itself was shifting, as if the stars had aligned to witness this moment. The council members recoiled, their expressions ranging from disbelief to fear. They had never witnessed anything like this before, and for the first time, they understood the true potential of humanity. The forgotten language was more than just a tool. It was a living, breathing force, and the humans had unlocked it. Elias lowered his hand, and the room slowly returned to its normal state. The energy dissipated, but the tension remained. The council was silent, staring at the humans with a mixture of awe and trepidation. It was clear that the power they had just witnessed was something none of them could ignore. "This," Elias said, his voice firm, "is only the beginning. Humanity is no longer a species to be underestimated. We are a force in the galaxy, and we will shape the future. Whether you choose to stand with us or against us is your decision. But know this, Earth will not be overlooked again." The chamber remained quiet as the gravity of his words settled in. For the first time, humanity was no longer on the outside looking in. They had shown the galaxy their true strength, and now the galaxy would never be the same. The age of humanity's silence had ended, and the universe would soon learn that Earth was no longer a place to be ignored. It was a power that could not be denied. The silence in the chamber was deafening. For a moment, it seemed as though time itself had frozen. The alien representatives, their eyes wide with a mixture of fear and awe, were struggling to comprehend the magnitude of what they had just witnessed. The walls, once pristine and unmoving, still seemed to hum with the power of the ancient language. The air felt charged, as if the very room itself had absorbed the energy they had unleashed. Elias stood tall, his expression calm, but inside, his heart raced. He knew they had crossed a line. There was no going back now. Humanity had shown its hand, and the galaxy would never look at them the same way again. The power they had unlocked was not just a tool. It was a force, a living force, and it had only begun to reveal its potential. The elder Zerath, who had once been the most vocal in his disdain for humanity, finally spoke. His voice was no longer filled with mockery, but with something new, something approaching respect. You have awakened something," he said, his eyes narrowing. "Something older than anything we've known. But you do not understand what you have done." Elias met his gaze, unwavering. "We understand more than you think," he replied. "You see, humanity has always been underestimated. But we are not weak, not fragile. We have the power to change the course of history. And now you will see it for yourselves." The council murmured among themselves, their faces a mix of uncertainty and apprehension. The ancient language was not just an artifact of power, it was a key to something far deeper. The elders knew that once humanity had unlocked its secrets, there would be no controlling it. It was not just a weapon, it was a force of nature, one that could reshape the galaxy itself. Maris, standing by Elias's side, spoke up. "We don't seek war. We don't seek domination. But we will no longer stand in the shadows. Humanity has been a silent observer for too long. Now we will be active participants in the future of this galaxy." Her words echoed through the chamber, resonating with the same weight that Elias's had. The other races, still recovering from the shock, exchanged glances. They could feel it, the shift in the balance of power. Humanity was no longer a species to be ignored. They had the power to reshape the galaxy, and the council could no longer deny that fact. The elder Zerath took a slow step forward, his posture tense but no longer hostile. "You have shown us your strength," he said, his voice measured. "But understand this. Strength alone does not determine your place in the galaxy. There are forces out there, forces older and more dangerous than you can imagine. This power you wield may very well be your undoing." Elias nodded, his gaze steady. "We are aware of the risks, but we will not shy away from them. Humanity has always risen to face its challenges, and we will continue to do so. We will not be your pawns, nor your enemies. We will be your equals, and we will chart our own path forward." The chamber was still for a long moment. The council members exchanged words in hushed tones, and for the first time, the humans could sense that the tides were shifting. The galaxy would have to reckon with the power of Earth, whether it was ready or not. Finally, the elder Giraffe spoke again, his voice heavy with thought. "It seems the galaxy has underestimated you, humanity. Perhaps there is more to your species than we thought." Elias gave a small nod, his resolve unwavering. "We will show you just how much more there is. Humanity is no longer a mystery, nor a curiosity. We are a force to be reckoned with, and the universe will remember this day." The council, though still wary, could no longer dismiss the humans as insignificant. The forgotten language had proven their worth, but more importantly, humanity had shown that they would no longer be the silent bystanders in the galactic drama. They had emerged from the shadows, ready to take their place among the stars. The age of humanity had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same.